Welcome to 3-Minute History with Mr. Marr. Quick summaries about a range of different history topics. Today we're going to look at an issue which had a transformative effect on the lives of many poor people who lived in Britain in the early 1900s. This was when the Liberal governments of 1906 to 1914 introduced a range of social changes, many of which still exist today. One of the changes that they introduced had a profound effect on elderly people. Before 1908, by and large people in Britain did not have pensions. This meant that some old people were forced to work until the last days of their lives, even being forced to go into the feared poorhouse. However, from 1908, an Old Age Pensions Act was introduced. This meant that people aged 70 plus were now eligible to get up to 5 shillings per week if they were a single pensioner. This had a major impact on improving lives, because now people could afford to give up work and yet still have an income. And by 1911, around 1 million people were claiming this. However, there were complaints, not least that a poverty study at the time suggested the minimum needed to actually avoid poverty fully was 7 shillings per week, as opposed to the 5 shillings which was the maximum people could get. Another group that the Liberals tried to help was young people, and they introduced a major range of changes to achieve this. In 1906, free school meals were introduced, although these were only optional for councils to introduce if they wished to raise local taxes. Nevertheless, by 1914, by which time they had become compulsory, 14 million meals were being given out every year. There were complaints about this, though, on the basis that many of the young people, although they benefited when they got meals, went hungry at weekends and during holiday periods. In 1907, medical inspections were introduced as well. Young people would be checked 3 times in their school career. And in 1908, what was known as the Children's Charter was passed, which included a range of measures designed to protect young people, including raising the age at which young people could access alcohol and tobacco. Another group that the Liberals tried to help were the sick, and in 1911 what was known as the National Insurance Act was passed. Part 1 aimed to help sick people by giving them sick pay. Workers would pay 4 pence per week, along with employers paying 3 pence and the government 2 pence. This was known as 4 pence for 9 pence. If a worker got sick, they could get up to 10 shillings for 13 weeks, and then 5 shillings for a further 13 weeks. They could even get access to a doctor. Some people did complain, though, that long-term sickness was ultimately not helped by this. The Liberals also took steps to help unemployed people. Again, before the Liberals came into being, unemployment very often meant extreme poverty. So Part 2 of the National Insurance Act meant that workers would pay 2.5 pence per week out their wages, but then could get 7 shillings per week for up to 15 weeks if they lost their job, although this only covered workers in certain industries such as construction and shipbuilding, and largely therefore excluded women. The Liberals also introduced what became known as labour exchanges. These were essentially the equivalent of modern job centres and were places that people could go and find jobs and also claim the unemployment benefit if they were eligible for this.